Hello friends, after a long break we are together again with a new tooth morphology study. The maxillary first premolar tooth is our subject, will be our subject today for the carving study. First of all, as always, here are the dimensions of the crown. You see the crown length is 8.6 millimeters and the root length is 13.4 millimeters in average, and this is the mesiodistal dimension. The width of the tooth, it's 7.1 millimeter, and here is the faciolingual or buccolingual dimension. It is 9.2 millimeters, and you can see here the 3 times bigger dimensions. When we multiply the dimensions with 3, these are the results, as you can see here. And it is a new tooth, and it is a little bit complicated than the teeth before we had studied. First of all, it has 2 roots. Up to now, all the teeth we have studied had single root, but this is a 2-rooted tooth, and here is an old sample that we have carved before. I have carved before. This tooth is neighboring the canine, the maxillary canine tooth, and it looks like a canine tooth in general, but a narrower crown, and also shorter. The crown is shorter than the canine, but from the buccal view it's a little bit similar to canine, we can say. The mesial cusp slope is longer than the distal slope. This is a unique property for this crown, because we know that for mandibular premolars and all canines the mesial slope is shorter than the distal slope, but for maxillary first premolar the mesial slope of the cusp is longer. It is unique, please remember that. And a shorter root when compared to the maxillary canine. We have a shorter buccal root here. Please remember the maxillary canine had the longest root in mouth. And from the buccal view you can see only one root, but from the mesial or distal view, from approximal view, we can see the other root, the lingual root. This is located at the lingual side of the buccal root, but it's a little bit shorter and narrower than the buccal root, so from the buccal view it is not in vision. And 2 cusps here we have. One cusp is longer, the buccal cusp is longer than the lingual cusp, and the buccal cusp tip has a wide angle, but the lingual cusp tip is a little bit more pointy. It's almost the right angle, not the wide angle, and there is a hexagon shape crown outline from the occlusal view, and also a very characteristic groove here. We have this groove extends the mesial marginal ridge and goes on to the approximal side, and we have also a deep groove here. This groove passes the cervical line and continues up to the root bifurcation. So this is a unique crown and unique tooth, and we will carve it today. Here is our block. It's almost the correct size. We have this block now. The soap is dry. I am using the same pack of soap from the beginning of the year, so it becomes more and more dry. I will need some more soap soon. So this is the block, and as always we will start with the cervical line, carving the cervical line. You know, the cervical line becomes more and more flat in posterior tooth than the anterior, so not too much curvy but still curvy. And we have a contour crest here, buccal contour crest, and we are carving the buccal surface but leaving the contour crest just close to the cervical line. And of course, just like canine, we have a buccal ridge here, but this buccal ridge is not as prominent as the canine buccal ridge. I choose this side will be the mesial side and this side will be the distal side. So the mesial slope of the cusp is longer than the distal slope. I am starting to shape the cusp slopes as well, slowly by slowly. The mesial slope of the cusp tip is longer, so the cusp tip is located a little bit distally than the middle of the crown. It should be located a little bit distal. Please remember, this is unique for this crown. So I have asked questions about this unique feature in your midterm exam as well, as you can remember. Here the mesial outline of the crown is a little bit concave in the cervical area up to the contact point. So I am giving a little bit concavity in the mesial surface here and carrying the mesial contact point a little bit cervically. Because the mesial contact point is located a little bit cervically than the distal contact point, and this is also unique for this tooth, for this crown. Here is the buccal ridge in the buccal side, just like the canine teeth, but not that prominent, little bit shallow buccal ridge. Here is the mesial concavity mesial cervical concavity of mesial outline, mesial surface, and mesial contact point here. Okay, and lingual side, of course. My spatula is a little bit bended. I'm not sure how it happened, but yes. Okay. So the lingual surface, the carving of the lingual side is starting with the cervical line again. Sorry for that. The lingual surface is more rounded, and this tooth becomes narrower, and at the lingual side, from the occlusal view, the lingual side becomes narrow than the buccal side. So I am reducing the width of the crown from the approximal surface and getting the walls closer through the lingual side, and it will be a roughly hexagonal shape in the end. And lingual cusp tip is located a little bit mesially than the buccal cusp tip. Please remember that the buccal cusp tip should be located a little bit distally than the middle, but the lingual cusp tip is opposite of the buccal cusp tip. It should be located a little bit mesially than the midline. And buccal contour crest is located just next to the cervical line, but lingual contour crest should be located in the middle of the crown, here. So I am now carving the lingual contour, and I am leaving the contour crest in the middle of the crown. I guess you are hearing the meow. My cat, because my cat wants to get in. But no way, because whenever it comes in, it starts to tour on top of the table and interrupts my work. So he has to wait outside. Yes. Okay, the lingual cusp tip is a little bit located in the mesial side of the midline. And please remember, the buccal cusp is little bit longer than the lingual cusp. So the crown outline is almost done. We will give some more details, of course, but the crown outline is almost done. And something important again, the buccolingual dimension of the crown is bigger than mesiodistal dimension. So be careful about it. Please be sure that your buccolingual dimension is larger, bigger than mesiodistal dimension. And you see it's a roughly hexagonal shape it has. So the crown outline is almost okay. I am carving the root outline roughly but carefully. Please be careful. The root part will be a little bit difficult for you because this is the first work with two roots. So the vocal root is wider than the lingual root, just like the crown part. So I am reducing the size of the root portion through the lingual side. And in the mesial side there is a groove here extending, passing the cervical line here, and makes the cervical portion of the crown at the mesial side a little bit concave. So I'm making the carving here, reducing the material. You see, slowly by slowly we are making the bifurcation area. Please remember the bifurcation area. Bifurcation means the area that the roots are splitting. If there are 3 roots, we call the splitting zone as trifurcation area, but if we have 2 roots, we call it bifurcation. Trifurcation or bifurcation. Okay. Yes, I am refining the cervical line to not to lose my proportions. And making the root apex now. The root apex is not too pointy, but not too blunt. And a little bit tilted to the distal side, of course. And the lingual root apex is mostly tilted to the distal side. Sometimes it's a little bit groovy and tilted to mesial side, but not too often. Okay. And the root splitting starts earlier in the mesial side. The groove starts just next to the cervical area. Root are becoming becomes apart almost from the middle of the root. But in the distal side, the bifurcation groove is not so prominent, and the root bifurcation starts a little bit more apically. As you can see, I am separating the roots slowly by slowly. Please do not hurry, because if you rush, you will make mistake. You can easily break one of the roots if you hurry too much. Slowly by slowly, the two roots come apart. Okay. Please remember, lingual root is a little bit smaller, little bit shorter root than the buccal root. I should make the cervical part of the crown in the lingual side narrower, make it narrow here. And the cusp tip is a little bit more pointy than the buccal cusp tip. And refining the cervical line again. And here is the mesial groove that is passing the cervical line. It is a really deep groove, you can see here. Yes, here is the deep mesial groove. Yeah. There is a depression here, I don't want it. Want this depression, so I am using my handpiece, my tool, sideways, as you can see here, to leveling the surface and removing the depression. And cervical line, refinement again. Okay. And one important thing is the cusp tip should be located close to each other, and that should be inside the borders of the root in the cervical area. So the cusp tip will not be too far from each other. The cuspids should be located close, near. Yes, this is the mesial side, a little bit concave because of the deep depression. Here. And this is the distal side. This is not concave, this is mostly convex. Yep. Here. I'm now making the lingual route little bit smaller, narrower in the cervical part. And here is the lingual root apex and buccal root apex. I can carve the root apexes more confidently now because all the crown outline is now seem more balanced. And be careful about the zone between the roots. It's time to use this smaller spatula. be careful about this zone particularly, because one mistake here can ruin everything. So I am making this lingual route a little bit smaller and thinner now. And I am separating the roots a little bit more. And please remember, the root separation starts in the mesial side more earlier, more close to the cervical line than the distal side. In the distal side there is not a such deep depression, and the root trunk continues more when compared with the mesial side. So here is the two roots. They are almost okay now, almost done. Again, to level the surface and get rid of the bumps, I am using my tool sideways and the blunt side, not the sharp side, the blunt side, and sideways. Okay, the root outline and the crown outline is almost done. Little bit developmental grooves in the mesial and distal side of the buccal ridge. And crown to root junction, the transition area is always the most difficult one, for me at least, probably for you as well. Yeah. I will refine it using my fingernail. Yes. And the occlusal surface, at last, excuse me. Please remember a bigger buccal cusp and a smaller lingual cusp. Central fossa is located a little bit lingually than the middle of buccolingual dimension. We have triangular ridges and triangular fossa here in both sides. So the first thing is to locate the central fossa, then deepen the central fossa, keep this line intact, and carve both sides of this line. Because there will be triangular ridges of the cusps. Don't make the triangular fossas too big. Okay. A more close weave. You see the triangular ridges. Please keep the triangular ridges here. Don't make too big fosses and marginal ridges. Triangular ridges should be prominent in the occlusal surface, on the occlusal surface. Make the cusp tips close to each other, not too far. A little bit more pointy, but shorter and smaller lingual cusp. A little bit more blunt, but longer and bigger buccal cusp should be here. We can make maybe a little bit deeper central groove. Okay, here is my brush. I will brush it for you. to see better. You see the hexagonal shape from the buccal view, buccal outline. And we have a distinctive feature again in the occlusal surface. Here was the, yes, mesial side. Sorry. Here was the mesial side, and there is a groove here in the mesial side extending and the marginal ridge and goes through the approximal area here. It cuts the marginal ridge here. It goes down to the middle of the mesial surface. Here you can see. Yes. And occlusal surface with T-cusps, marginal ridge, triangular fossa, and some supplementary grooves we can make, just like this here. Okay. Okay, friends. Here is our first premolar. See you and bye bye.